So good afternoon, everyone. And this is the first session after the lunch, and also usually one of the toughest period to navigate through. But I will do my best to keep it entertaining, also interesting. But then I need your support too. So let's begin. So maybe if you are wondering what has an airline industry to do with data, AI, and Gen AI on all other state-of-the-art technologies. So I would say a lot, because data and AI, they form the backbone of the flight operations, passenger operations, ground operations, and so on. So these are the divisions you usually find in an airline industry. And there are a lot of cool use cases, like how do you optimize the catering to serve the passengers well? What is the right quantity or the optimal quantity of fuel that you should take along? In that way, you also burn less fuel, make the airline less heavy. So today, it's not about the operations, but rather on the compliance side. So the use case is how do we harness AI for achieving the dynamic compliance? So basically, it's about digitizing and automating airline regulations. A little bit about me. So I'm a software engineering leader at KLM Royal Dutch Airlines. 12 years of work experience living in Eindhoven in the Netherlands. I have extensive experiences with industry giants like ASML and Philips. So my association with this Knime analytics platform was when I started at ASML. I think we were one of the earliest adopters there, and also a small group of users who started experimenting with Knime. I think we also presented one of the use cases on the wafer, I think a few years ago. But this time, I'm not here for ASML, but for KLM. I also worked at Philips Healthcare, which is also one of the highly regulated industries, because they have a direct influence on the patients. I lead 5 teams at KLM, so they specialize in app development, data science, data engineering, analysis, biz DevOps, and so on. I'm passionate about innovation, value or close collaboration with different stakeholders, and so on. So how many of you know that KLM is the world's oldest airline, still under its original name? So this was also one of the discoveries that I made, because I started at KLM quite recently, in February last year. But we are the world's first, not the first, but the oldest airline, still under the original name, still in the operation. And that says a lot about the company. So we were founded in 1919. Headquarters is in Amstelveen, Netherlands. These are some numbers which I took from the archive. So the numbers are not very important. What's important here is the scale of operations. It is huge. So any slack in compliance can have big consequences on everything, especially the trust that customer puts in us. So as we talk about compliance, so as we know, airline industry like healthcare, legal, etc., it's very highly regulated, which means there is an obligation to comply to the safety standards, security measures, protocols, most importantly, sustainability measures, for example, environmental regulations, CO2 waste management. And last but not the least, it's about operational compliance requirements. So how do you ensure that your cabin and the cockpit crew are well-trained? And these are some of the well-known organizations, regulatory bodies around the world. So, and they publish legislations, amendments, and so on. So it's a big journal, big book. And then you have to comply to it. You have to prove that you are safe, you are compliant with the natural obligations, etc. So when we talk about compliance, it's a broad category. So usually it comes in two flavors. One is initial compliance, and the second one is continued compliance. So what does initial mean? Initial is actually you keep monitoring what are the new regulations, has something changed in the past, what are the ways you should comply to, etc. And that you have to do in a timely manner, because if you don't do it, there is a lot of significant impact damages that can happen, which I will just show in the next slide. So usually the output of initial compliance, it is a big process. When you follow the process, you get a compliance checklist. And then you pass it on to the SMEs, the operations basically, and they make use of it to prove the compliance. And then the second part is continued compliance, which means you have to regularly check, are we following the rules? Are we following it in an optimal way? Has there been a slack in the past? What were the measures taken to solve it on time and regular manner? So the second part is usually enforced by the regular audits. You have to audit them regularly. So this is actually out of scope of this presentation. So what's in scope is the initial compliance. So as I was talking about any slack in non-compliance, so what's the cost? It could be as high as $15 million per incident. So this is based on a study conducted by the Deloitte. Sometimes it can also lead to the grounding of fleets. And usually it also leads to the restrictions on operating in certain regions where you don't comply to. So if I have to summarize this, it's a significant revenue loss. And if you consider the scale of operations, the number of employees working for airline industries, it's quite huge. Impact not only on the company, but also on the people. And if you consider other highly regulated sectors like healthcare, this is even stringent. So it can have very devastating consequences. So yes, so this is a very common use case, but less heard of because the highly regulated sectors are usually on the background. So let's have a look at the traditional manual compliance process that is usually followed even now. So the way it begins is you browse all the websites, let's say, or the data sources of all regulatory bodies you need to comply to. Usually you find such legislations in the form of PDF. You digitize them, get it reviewed with the SMEs. Then there's a back and forth communications. Once it's okay, there is a document management system where you upload this, and then you communicate what changed and etc. So each and every step has some challenges. For example, yes, the structure of legislation, the file format is directly proportional to the regulatory bodies. The more such bodies, they have their own style. You have less control over the format, so you have to digitize in such a way that you don't lose essential info. Since this is a manual step, the whole process is manual. So there is a lot of scope of human errors, missed formatting sometimes. You miss the communication on the updates. The review is often laborious. It is time-consuming. There are differences in the text formatting. It depends on who is writing and what is being used. Is it a Word? Is it an Excel, etc. And there are always challenges in the communication, because then you have to really get to know what has really changed between the last two versions. And since this is a manual process, the cycle time is in the order of few weeks. It can even take months, so quite big. And then, you cannot have such a slack in proving your compliance. So here I let you see, I have included limited examples here. So there are two legislations of two bodies within Europe. And they vary across the legislation. So sometimes you have a RESTful API, sometimes you don't. Even if they have a RESTful API, you get an XML file response. So complicated. And then there is a European body called EASA. It only offers PDFs. There's no structured way of querying the data. The next challenge comes is that in a compliance, you have these two dates, source date and the valid from date. So the source date is something, the date of publication of the legislation. Usually it's not the date of publication of the journal, because journal has a lot of legislations. And there's a date called valid from date, where it tells the date from which the article or the amendment has come into effect. And if you see the data on the left side, it's difficult for a human to exactly define what's the start date or what's the end date, because of the variations in the way these legislations are written. So it also depends on the, as I said, on the people writing or the bodies who publish this. Sometimes it is Word format, as it says, the regulation shall enter into force on the 20th day following the date of publication. Sometimes you have a specific date written, then you have to determine, okay, what is it, the 20th day after the publication, or is it the specific date mentioned in the journal? And if you look at the second example, the source date is 16 September, but the valid from date, if you follow this definition, it's 25th of August. So, but then you also get confused. So what's the 20th day after 16 September? What's that day called? So yes, so these are the mistakes that a human makes. And another variation is that legislation could have a lot of valid from dates, and that depends on the point exactly, or the article, or the attachment which has changed. So here it says the article 1 shall apply from 18th of May, except the point 1, because article has a number of points. And then there are certain points which have, in the annexures, which have a different valid from date. So yes, if you recognize the complexity, it's very difficult to automate. So here comes the digitization of the regulations and amendments. So we usually, we began this, I think, exactly 1 year before. We started with the ETL, which produces a structured file. So we basically limited the scope to only the European legislations. So once you produce the structured files, there are models as well. So it's ETL in combination with AI ML models. You review with the SMEs. There are a back and forth process followed here, and once everything is approved, you basically upload in the document management system. We solved quite a few challenges. Although the AI ML model, it could detect the source date and the valid from date, let's say 80% of the time right. But there were also advantages. We reduced the cycle time, more frequent reviews, and faster feedbacks. But in this process, we saw that the code complexity increased a lot. So even a small or a minor enhancement could take a few days or even few weeks. But then every solution has its own challenges. If you have a look at the response you get from the APIs, yes, it's complex. You have to make the model understand what these tags mean, and these tags differ for every piece of legislation that you query. And this challenge still remains, as I said. It cannot accurately predict what's the real start date, what's the real valid from date. And this makes the business logic difficult. So a newcomer has to undergo or has to spend a lot of time getting ramped up, understanding the business logic. The challenge remains here. exactly the same. So you have to write the business logic in such a way that it's easier for people to understand. Also, it's easier to review. And yeah, the main objective of this digitization is that you want to make the life easier for the SMEs, make the life easier for the operations, so that they have to spend less time in doing something which which is not their expertise. Their expertise is making the operations run smoothly. Here comes, we covered the legislations. Now comes the amendments. So, well, as a techie, you would like a format where it says this is the point or the article number, and then there is a second column which says this is the old text, third column which is a new text, and that would make the life easier for everyone. But if you go through the document, you see such text, like the second paragraph is deleted, certain point is deleted, a point A to point C is deleted. Sometimes it also says that within a point, there are, let's say, 10 subpoints, and within a subpoint, there are a number of paragraphs, so the third paragraph has been deleted. And then, so if you try to train the model on each and every piece of amendment, and this is an example of one legislation. So a legislation has a certain number of amendments. And I just took the example from one amendment, and there were 18 such amendments. So you basically, you train the model on each and every data source and keep training it until you cover all the legislations and amendments of regulatory bodies. And that is not an optimal solution, because you are basically shifting the work from those manual digitizers to the software engineers. So you don't solve, I would say you are not solving the problem. You are basically shifting the cost from one business unit to another. And if you have a look at the second amendment, it says, so usually there are certain articles which are applicable to a certain number of countries, and what's important is the order in which they are listed. Sometimes it says a certain country has been added above one country. Sometimes it says it has been added below, and you have to maintain that order, because that's important to carry out the steps of compliance. And in this example, if you see, it says the Kingdom of Norway in one of the attachments, that it should be inserted above Jersey, and in another attachment, it says it should be inserted below Montenegro. So again, a lot of human intervention required here to get the order right. And this is one of the examples I took from the security initial, so very important legislation which the airline industries have to comply with. And then we recognize these problems. We try to change the automated flow, especially that you don't want a business logic per article, per amendment, or per legislation. You want to have a common piece of software, let's say, which can digitize everything. And this is where Gen AI, yes, of course, Knime comes into picture. Because, with the usage of Knime, we were able to, let's say, avoid writing a lot of code which becomes unmaintainable in the certain future over the coming years. And we try to make use of Gen AI to move the business logic to the prompts. Because what you see is legislations, amendments, these are public data. It's open for everyone. And usually the LLMs are trained on such data. And we were able to solve some of the challenges. Like we did experiment with 3 LLMs, OpenAI, Gemini, and Llama. And we selected Gemini because this also aligned with our company's standards to follow. And we also saw that it produces quite accurate results. Although OpenAI also produced, they had a very good competition. And then we saw that Llama model was actually hallucinating a lot. So sometimes it gives one response. If you run the code another time, it gives certainly a completely different response. So the advantages that this flow brings, so we remove the code, we use the low-code platforms, Gen AI, that it makes the development easy, fast, makes it easier for us to communicate to the business. Yes, the complexity decreases, easier to get someone ramped up. And most importantly, the cycle time of it reduced quite a lot from matter of few weeks or few months to matter of few hours. But as I said, every flow has its own challenges. This is not a challenge. This is just one snippet that I'm showing you, that instead of coding the business logic ourselves for each and every piece of legislation, we basically ask the LLM models to get the output in the required format. And so it does give, in this example, it has performed very accurate. So it knows what's the store date, what's the valid from date. Obviously, we have to feed the definitions to it. But this is one format with which you can work quite conveniently than going through the PDFs and parsing the text. And the challenges, so, well, I try to include a lot of info in the prompt. I asked it that, okay, this is the piece of text. I want either an article number or annex number, and then certain description, regulations, source, and the valid from date. But the way it performed, if you have a look, yes, it's devastating. So I can't make use of such data. And in this example, I only provided a piece of legislation, a piece of article. I left out the annexures part, but it did came up with certain text out of nowhere. So the learning is that you put a garbage in, you get a garbage out. There were cases of hallucinations. So the learnings are you be precise in what you ask. You use high-quality data sets. Since this is public data, and these are usually published by a lot of review cycles through the regulatory bodies, they are highly qualified. Always cross-reference the model's output with the verified sources of information. And last but not the least, a human review. It's very important because of the deviations it can have sometimes. And here I show you the snippet part of the workflow. We basically used a variety of Knime nodes, mostly the ETL, but also the open labs, the OpenAI lab nodes as well. Also, we are trying to make use of the Gemini, etc., to do some more tests before industrializing. And the business impact, it has it's a lot. So we were able to save the cost of 3 FTEs. I have shown you that there were 3 FTEs involved in digitizing the documentations. We could save that. Efficiency enhancement is a big gain out of it, because then you make the life of the SMEs easier, a lot easier. They can spend their time on operations rather than worrying these stuff. Cycle time reductions, as I said, from few weeks or even months to hours. So that's a big improvement. We could do it in a very fast, very timely manner, and that led to faster feedbacks. And the last but not the least, the quality improvement that we had. We reduced a lot of human errors, which go unnoticed quite a lot of time, and that led to the highest customer satisfaction. So the customer here is not the passengers, but our business for which we work, safety and the compliance organization. I think that's the end. So it's time for Q&A.
Thank you very much, Ranbir, for sharing that with us. We have a couple of minutes more, so we have time for questions. Let me just have a look around. I think we have a first question from the audience there. Thanks.
Yes.
Just hold on a second. We'll get the volume up there. There we go.
Hello? Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. Very interesting. I was thinking, do you see how maybe this current solution can be maybe enhanced or added into an agentic system that we discussed, I mean, profoundly yesterday on the stage? Do you see, I have the feeling this can be very easily translated into a very powerful tool or altogether into an agentic system, and I wanted maybe to hear if this could be something that you have already thought of, or that maybe you took inspiration from what you saw yesterday to transform it into one.
Yes, so we did think of this before. So we have a close collaboration with our partner, which is Air France. So Air France KLM is one group, but then we do these cases together. And we see that there is quite a lot of scope, especially in this sector, because especially in the compliance sector, because a lot of stuff is done manually. So yes, the agentic, these agents and the workflows would play a very big role. And yes, we are still in process of getting the accuracy high, because that's one of the pain points, difficult to achieve. But as you see, there are a lot of data sources. These are public, so you don't need to worry about the confidentiality. So it makes a very good use case. Yes, as I said, we are still busy with further evaluating the kind of models that we are allowed to use. Going forward, yes, the end goal of our product is just provide a system which gives you the right answer to your queries, to our business. So they don't need to go through the set of legislations, etc. They ask a question, okay, what's changed between the version 4 and version 5, and what are the ways you can comply to it? So that's more important. So this is a way, I think, a very cool use case. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let's see if we have one more question, please.
Hi, thank you. Wouldn't it be in the interest of all airlines to have like a unified way to structure these documents to be faster in knowing about security issues and stuff?
Yes, so see, what we see now is every airline company has its own process of doing things. And we at KLM Air France, we have a very tight process. Yeah, that's historic. And yes, of course, this is something which benefits everyone, but then it's kind of a business decision that do you want to do it together? Yeah, you know, for all such competition clauses, etc. So it's highly regulated. It's not that you decide among yourself that we will go in this way. You have to take a lot of permissions, especially from different countries, different unions, that you do not violate those anti-competition clauses. So that makes it difficult for us. But we are from the data and technology department, so we don't care for this. We just deliver what is asked.